Hello everyone, my name's Willow and I work for Toca Boca. I'm a play designer at Toca Boca, and a big distinction here is I'm not a game designer. That's very important, and I'll hopefully have explained that by the end of the talk. And what I'm going to talk about today is how we at Toca Boca see play and why we feel it's so important. So this phrase is like the foundation of our whole company. In 2011, Björn Jeffries and Emil Overmar started up Toca Boca, and it was based around this new thing that was coming out called the iPad. And they saw this device and they thought, wow, with all its like touchscreen intuitivity and the fact that you can transport it around and this pass-back effect that were going on, it could be the ultimate toy. However, it was about the content that needed to be designed for it. So what they started to do was do a little bit of research. So they went out and they looked at types of play. And they started to categorize it. And they categorized the play into active play, which is like outdoor play, playing around, social play. Make-believe play, when you're like role-playing and coming up with stories. They categorize one as manipulative play, which sounds maybe a bit manipulative, but they more meant this is like creative play, where you have the power to manipulate something and change it into something else, something unique. They also, they also saw another type of play, creative play, which was more about designing new things and coming up with new outcomes. And then they saw how one type of play was very educational based. It was all about learning new things, maybe quite academic focused. So after they did this research, they started to map it onto the App Store. And at that time, the App Store for kids was very underdeveloped. And so what they did was they found out that there was an awful lot of cupcake apps and an awful lot of apps that were aimed towards academic learning for kids. But there was very, very few make-believe apps that were focused on telling stories, coming up with new things. So they realized there was an opportunity area here. So since then, we have created, I think it's 26 apps now, and had more than 90 million downloads, if I'm correct. My PR person can probably help me out better a bit. And we've been doing fairly well. And maybe why is this, I guess? Well, this is our offices in Stockholm. And as you can perhaps see, we do like to play a lot. And we like to play from the kids' perspective. So we have loads of these giant heads that we dress up in, and we actually did a marketing campaign where this is our character Boo, up here. He's the main character in town, Toca Town really. And some lucky soul got to dress up in him on a hot Swedish summer day and walk around the city and have photographs taken of him. And then the other photo is from our summer party. And the summer party we hold is not a party for adults, it's a party for kids, which means that I, as an adult, have a way better time at any office summer party I've ever had. And in this case, what we did was we took away all our computers in our main working area, and we turned it into a live Toca Cars racetrack. And we made cars, and we dressed them up in cardboard, and we built loads of cardboard boxes, and the kids got to like ride them around and crash into all the boxes. And it was really, really, really fun. So we try to bring play into our everyday working life as much as possible. But let's go back to my role as a play designer. And a lot of the responsibilities of my role is trying to think about things from the kids' perspective. But this can be quite challenging, because although I might feel like a kid at some times, I'm not. It's quite apparent that I am an adult that has a very different experience of the world than a kid. This is a Swedish video that I'm going to show you next, from a movie called Astrid. And I think it's a really good example of explaining life from the kids' perspective.
Sluta.
Nej, jag har lovat att du ska komma.
Men jag har sagt nej. Jag har sagt nej säkert 7 gånger. Jag kommer inte säga det mer. Du kan inte bestämma saker med dina kompisar utan att prata med mig först. Det funkar inte så. Kom nu.
Men jag klarar mig ju själv.
Nej, älskling, det gör du faktiskt inte. Du är 11 år och 11-åringar kan inte bestämma för sig själva. Man kan inte ha roligt hela tiden.
Men jag har ju alltid tråkigt.
Ja, men då får du ha lite tråkigt igen och bryta ihop. Det kan vara bra för dig. Kom nu. Okej, du går. Kommer du?
Yeah, so as you heard, 11-year-olds can't decide for themselves. You know, they're not actually people that maybe have control over their own lives or can make decisions for themselves. And if we do look at a kid's everyday life, a lot of the activities that they're involved in are directed by adults. They are told, like, when to go to bed, when to wake up in the morning, what to eat for breakfast, what to have to school. And the one time in their daily life when they can maybe have a bit more freedom is scheduled into their day, and it's called a playground, and it's within certain boundaries, and that's where they're allowed to play. And I read recently that in the States, 20% of schools are eliminating recess. So that means that kids don't get to play at all during their academic day. And this to me is shocking. It's like play is a bit like an animal that's about to go into extinction. And I don't understand why we as a society aren't better at allowing kids to play freely and control their own lives. Because if we did allow kids to be a bit more in control, we would find some really great results. Some of these photos are from when kids take charge of a classroom, from when kids start to cook themselves, and from when siblings start to put themselves to bed and tell their own bedtime stories. And you can really find like how independent and creative and very responsible kids can be when you allow them to be like this. And we at Toca Boca, we feel that it's very important because what it does is it engages the superpowers of a kid. It allows them to transform into someone that they wouldn't otherwise be able to be. So let's talk a little bit about our main inspiration. And a lot of our apps focus on types of everyday play. And a lot of this is traditional role-playing types of play. If you look here, these two types of play is playing doctor and having tea party. And they inspired our app Toca Boca, which was a very early one, and Toca Tea Party, which was one of our first ones, that turned the iPad into a table and used it as a tea set. That basically just became a sort of enhanced replica of playing tea in real life. And these were really successful, and also allowed parents to like come in and role play with their kids. And we learned a lot from that. We also try and bring play into our process and our design making. So this can be seen in ways that we have workshops, creative types of play where we bring in kids and they will have like draw characters and come up with ideas. And a lot of the time it's not like directly inspiring what we're going to do in an app, but it gives us a slightly like bigger conceptual understanding of what their expectations might be about a certain theme, or what they really like or what they don't really like. We also do a lot of paper prototyping, which while it can't get across anything near an interactive experience, it can help a lot with thinking about the flow and how a kid might want a freedom of choice in the process as opposed to having to go through a linear step-by-step process. And then our main thing is we have loads and loads of play observations. And this is kids that we know, kids that we're related to, playing our apps, along with kids coming into our offices. And then we also have loads of relationships with schools where we go there and we play with our prototypes And then we iterate on them, and we play again, and we iterate, and we constantly do this throughout the process. And why do we do this? Well, the main reason is to build empathy, because when you spend a lot of time with a certain audience, you start to understand things from their perspective, and that gives you a chance to understand them and be empathetic towards their needs. And that means we can design experiences from their perspective and not from an adult perspective that is thinking what a child needs. And this really helps. And it leads on to one of our main principles, which is we don't show kids how to play. They are the masters of play. They know how to play the best. We need to learn from them. And when we think about our products, we don't talk about them as apps, we talk about them as toys. Because if you think about a toy, it's a good toy. It's very intuitive. A kid can pick it up and they can play with it however they want. It doesn't need instructions, they don't need any intervention in any way, they can make it what they will. And that is the goal and ambition with our apps, that a kid can pick it up and they don't need to be told anything, and they can just make it what they will. And if this works, what can happen is a transformation. That kid can be transformed from their everyday lives, where they're told what to do all the time by adults and not allowed to do what they really want to, into a story lover, a creator, or a master. And this is based on Jean Delvecchio's book called The Blockbuster Toy, which is a really great book, and I recommend anyone to read it, where he talks a lot about transformation through play. And it's a lot of inspiration for what we're aiming for. So now I'm going to show you some examples of our apps that cover these areas. This is one of our fairly recent apps now, Toca Town. It's one of my favorite ones. And it all focuses around role-playing. Now, if you as an adult play this app, most of the time you're left going, what's this about? There's no predefined animations, there's no mini games. We've had reviews from angry parents being like, I deleted this before my child played it. What are they supposed to do here? So the key here is to actually watch a kid play this app, because then you realize what it's about. It's a story-making tool. And there's no predefined things in it, because we give kids the power to make up their own stories. So therefore, none of the characters have a backstory, and there's nothing from us as the artists that is saying you should play this way. It's up to them. Here's Mia playing the app.
This is the birthday girl, and then she has to wear this. And then everybody gives everybody stuff, her stuff. Here you go, and then they just keep on giving her stuff till she's all full. Like that, and then they do that stuff. And they can do it sometimes. Do this, and then you do it higher and higher and higher.
It's the hat stacking system there. It's a very popular system in the game. And role-playing parties is incredibly popular with kids. So there's a lot of variety in this app. We try and find different play patterns the kids might want to play, and then we support those play patterns with different props. Another example of creative play is our app Hair Salon. This is one of our most successful apps. And probably the successful part of this is the tactility and ability to sculpt hair in ways that you probably could never do in real life. And it gives kids the power to sort of think about what they might want to be in the future and practice it. Here it is.
Ooh. Ooh.
And one of the things about this app that we found in all our play observations was the emotional feedback the characters could give you. And by sometimes behaving like a bit shocked or disliking what you were doing and then being happy, that sort of allowed kids to decide they wanted to torture their characters or like be nice to them. And it gave them a bit of like power and choice in that level. And our next app, which is focused on exploratory play, is all about torturing characters. You basically have a set of elements that you can torture in various different ways, and then they will transform into different elements. And this is called Toca Lab. But before I go, I just want to make a big point that when you're working with products for kids, you have a great responsibility, because a lot of the time, kids will take anything they're given and absorb it on a subconscious level. So you generally have a responsibility to think very, very strongly about what you are presenting to them. So a lot of the time, for example, I'm sure you're all familiar with this image that's happening in loads of toy stores around the world where play is being gender segmented. There is the blue aisle for boys with all the science and the action stuff, and there's the pink aisle for girls, which is all about cooking and frilly, girly things. And we at Toca Boca, we just don't understand why you need to segregate pay. I mean, maybe for marketing purposes you can earn a lot of money, but on the moral and ethic level, why necessarily say you can only play with this and you can only play with that? So one of our big principles is that we design for diversity. So when we're thinking about our character set, our settings, we always try and work out what are our own biases, what are our own stereotypes, and make sure that we don't fall into these. However, even though we do try and do this, one of our oldest apps, Toca Robot Lab, we realized that there was one female robot. And she just happened to be pink, with a heart at her center. And, you know, not that there's anything wrong about that, but when you compare her to the other robots who are all male, she becomes incredibly, incredibly stereotypical. So we realized we needed to do a redesign of this. And we redesigned all the robots to be, you know, more based on everyday objects that were friendly and colorful. So there was no necessary gender message in any of them. Another example is our vegetarian option in our Toca kitchen. If you go into settings, you can turn on the vegetarian mode, which removes all the meat and adds some tofu. And in our new app, we have a Toca Kitchen 2 out. I think this is slightly more advanced because the whole team was almost vegetarian, so they had a lot to say on what types of food should be in there. But these are examples of how we try and think about the types of kids that are playing and, you know, the backgrounds they come from and their references. And one just last thing, this summer party that I was telling you all about that we had, this is a picture from, you saw the before picture of us sitting in a car after having designed it all and spending a lot of time making all these boxes look wonderful. This is the picture 10 minutes after the kids came in. So we had spent, I don't know, half a day making everything look really nice and spacing it all out. And then, of course, what is it about? It's about making a mess. It's about piling up all the boxes into a giant wall and racing into them as fast as you can. Which is, you know, it's a good insight into how you might spend crazy time agonizing over some details when really it's about the bigger concept, which is what is going to really get kids engaged. And before I go, I'm just going to leave you with a video from Lanisha, who's 7 years old. She's playing Toca Town, and in this video, you might understand why making a mess is very important, but tidying up afterwards is just as important.
It's like a big, I remember that we should put that in the garbage, because it would be silly to see lots of rubbish lying around.
Yeah, that's true. Do you like keeping things clean in Toca Town?
Yeah, because it wouldn't be nice for those who came after me, and if they were testing Toca Town, it wouldn't be so nice for them.
Thank you.